Put yourselves in my shoe. It's something we don't like, whether we are at school, whether we like our parents asking us that, teachers, anyone in society. We hate questions. And here I stand before you as a man who earns his living asking those questions. So we must have thought it through and done something to get paid for something that you inherently dislike, which is being asked questions. So I'm going to start in typical style, since it's a place I'm familiar with and I've done shows here as a quiz master, to start with a question. And it is one of those most irritating questions which is by-hearted by every family member, especially in a country like India. Whether you know them as dear relatives or not, they love asking you this passionately. What are you doing with your life? You so wish to ask them back that question, but you have no choice but to receive such questions. But if you dive a little deeper into that question, that's perhaps the reason why all of us are here today. We're trying to figure out what are we doing with our lives and how do we get to where do we want to get. Comes to the next important question, and in life when you ask a question, always ask yourself the same question. What am I doing with my life? So the first part for me is to probably introspect and tell you, which in the context of today is, what's my IKIGAI? And it started out of a simple question a journalist asked me many years ago when I started doing quizzing more as a passion than as a profession. And the question actually hit many of us who were part of a young startup. The question was very simple, and it said, how do you increase the general knowledge, confidence, and probably communication levels of those who don't take part in quiz competitions? That's an interesting thought. We normally think quizzing, etc., is only for people who take part in quiz shows. But quizzing is actually an outside classroom medium of letting you know what's happening outside in the world. The more you get involved in gathering such information, whether you choose to quiz or not to quiz, you actually become a better speaker because you have more information to share. So it's essentially a person who gathers information beyond his normal competence who ends up being good at such things. But these are mere output mediums. What's important is for you to value the information that you are gathering over different periods and points in time. That gave me the next important proposition, which coincidentally happened at this very city, at the Ahmedabad Management Association auditorium, more than a decade and a half ago, when we had the fortune of working with our former president, Dr. Kalam. And while I was meeting him right here in this city, he threw this question at me. Can you ignite the minds of 1 million children each year? And it blew me off at that point in time to even imagine those kind of numbers. But such questions is actually what sets you thinking, makes you introspect, and forces you to find solutions. Fast forward to where we are. We realized that life is pretty simple. Everyone is looking at knowledge. There are two parts to it. There are people who seek knowledge, and there are people who share knowledge. There was very little that happened beyond focused environments like educational institutions, where you have a sharer who's called the educator or the teacher or the professor. You have the seeker who's called a student or pupil. The transactional material is knowledge. But if you take that outside the spectrum of a controlled environment, it goes completely haywire. Which is when we thought bringing this together, especially on non-academic platforms of appreciating knowledge around the world, is when you just bring these two together into a sort of an ecosystem, and basically you're catering to people with similar interests. So the way we look at them is they actually become part of what's a knowledge tribe, which is all that we've been doing over the last many years. And in the process of doing that, we've been fortunate that we've actually managed to create roughly about 16 million touch points over the last 14 years. And all we've been doing is to try and ignite human curiosity. And that really is the core facet of learning. And that brings me to the most important question we're all trying to address here today, which is, how do you find your ikigai? It's all nice and fine to say, what's my ikigai? It's nice and fine to ask you, what's your ikigai? But there must be a process for someone to figure out, what's your passion? What's your calling? How do you go about doing that if it doesn't dawn on you? There are two ways to figure out your ikigai. Sit under a tree and believe in the old philosophy that it will come and dawn on you like a sunshine above your head one fine morning. Unlikely to happen for the vast majority. For those who look at a constructive approach to trying and finding this, which is the more scientific way of looking at things, which is really how we grew into a profession like this, far from a profession that anybody would even imagine as a profession. Like I started, who would pay you to ask questions and how would you sustain a model like that? So there must be a process to try and understand that it is your calling. So how do you find yours, especially given that you're really young and you have a long span of future ahead of you to try and figure what your ikigai is? I've got 3 simple steps. Unfailingly works person after person. First one, your dreams. They're extremely important ingredients for you to find your ikigai. What's more important is, many of us focus on the dreams when we are asleep. We wake up in the morning and we say, hey, I had a dream. There's a second set of dreams that we ignore, and we think they're random thoughts. Most important in life are those dreams that do not allow you to sleep. There are many of those things that occupy our minds as human beings and just do not allow us to sleep. Focus on those dreams that do not allow you to sleep. If it's occupying your mind repeatedly, it's got something to do with you deep within you. It's something you need to start taking seriously. That's step 1 in trying to discover what your ikigai can be. Step 2, your inner voice. Most of us in life focus on the external. Most of us in life focus on telling people what we do. Most people in the world tend to ask you, what do you do? When you start listening to your inner voice, that whole question flips. When you are on the exterior, you're telling people what you do. When you go deep within, you're actually asking yourself, why do I do what I do? The purpose behind what you are doing is your inner voice. If you are enjoying what you are doing, your inner voice tells you that. You feel good about what you do. Nobody ever in life asks you, are you feeling good about what you do? All they ask you is, what do you do? So always look deep within and try to figure on step 2, shift your focus from what you do to why you do what you do. So you got point 1, you got point 2. You got a point number 3, which is equally important, and that is to try and find your true love. And I don't mean it in a college environment sense. I quite mean in a slightly more broader genre. And it could be true in a college environment too when you apply these, but don't hold me responsible for it. Here's the first part. How do you spend your free time? Everyone tries to ask you, what are the things that you do constructively? I ask you, what do you do when you're not doing something constructive? You're doing something with your life. Have you ever wondered what you do with your free time? It's what you like doing. Take note of those, and take note of those far more seriously than you ever did before, because it could be a direction finder for you. Second question. What are the things that you would do when people tell you, I'm not going to pay you for it? There must be certain things that you're willing to do even if you don't get paid for it. And there are many things that we would do as human beings because it makes you feel different. The association makes you feel different. You feel good or happy about it. you're willing to do that task even without getting paid a rupee for it. Figure out what those things are that you are willing to do when you are not going to get paid a penny or a rupee for it. It gives you a direction in your life. Third, philosophical as it may sound, there's only one thing that is certain about life. And that's the beauty about life. The one thing that's certain about life is death. And that's your last question that you need to answer for yourself, which is, what would you do if you had just 1 year to live your life? It perhaps sounds like a reflection of what someone like a Steve Jobs spoke when he was told that his life is now counting backwards, like probably this monitor in front of me. It's a very different feeling. And you start looking at life very differently. Imagine and close your eyes and think, everything that you do and transact with in your lives, including buying a drink to have, including buying a biscuit packet to eat, including buying any food stuff that's packed for you, you have one common thing to everything in this world. It comes with an expiry date. What if the Creator had sent you down with an expiry date written somewhere on you? You would have thought differently. The beauty and the romance about our life on earth is we do not know what time span we have. Yet, we've got to do what we want to do in that unknown time span to leave our imprint behind. That is what makes life beautiful. Because you don't know what your runway is, but you still got to fly within the runway that you have. So please ask yourselves that question. If I genuinely had only 1 year left, what are the things I would want to do with my life if money did not matter at all? You will find a lot of directions in your life, at least to the things that deeply matter to you within you. Quick last thought, especially because you are a young audience here today. Ask yourself, how do you want people to remember you? Not in a large, profound manner to begin with. Simple questions that you can answer for yourself. You've had a conversation with someone, the conversation has ended, you have left. What do you want that person to tell another person about who came to meet you? You want your impression to be left behind in a manner that he introduces you in the best manner possible after you have left. How would you like to be remembered? Start becoming that person. Second, how would you like to be remembered after you go for a party? You want to be remembered as someone who should never ever be invited for another party? Or you want to be remembered as someone, hey, you want to have a party, make sure this person is at the party. What kind of an impression do you leave behind? And that is what will determine that you are leaving behind what you like most about what you are and what you are best at. Think about what you would do after a meeting. Last is what I covered previously. Think about what you want to be remembered after you are gone. There are many today, and the world calls them celebrities. Celebrities are those people who are celebrities after their death. Can you be one? Ask yourself that question. It's a powerful word. We all live in a world governed by celebrities. How many of us have the courage here to say, I will turn out to be a celebrity who is relevant and makes money sometimes even after I am dead and gone, because my creation and what I've left behind lives after my time biologically? That's a very important question to answer. What it does in my formula to you is it essentially takes you from your dreams, your inner voice and your true love to finding out what are the things that are meaningful to you and something that ignites your curiosity. If something is of great meaning to you, you're curious to know more about it. If something is of interest to you, you're more curious to know things about it. If there is a new girl in the neighborhood, you're curious to know more about her. It has a meaning to you and your future at that point in time in your life, and therefore you're curious. And you're curious in different forms. Where does she come from? Where does she live? Where does she study? Does she have a brother who's big enough to beat me up tomorrow morning? You do enormous amount of research because it is interesting to you, but you do not apply the same interest when it comes to finding your own calling for your future. Look within, you know the directions. It's just that you're not willing to look within. Moving on. Here's the entire map. What ignites your curiosity is what you need to find out. The moment you do that, you invest a little bit of time on what you are curious. If you don't invest time on what you're interested in, you're not going to be able to progress. You've got to invest time, even if it's a hobby, go into it. You're not going to be waiting there, standing for people to come and tell you you're great at it. You've got to put time into it. The moment you start investing time in what you're interested in, it becomes your passion. And the moment it becomes your passion, you start deep diving into it, and you go so into it that you sort of become an expert at what you start doing. So it's a clear correlation between time you invest in what you're curious on, and therefore what you become passionate about. The moment you're deep into something, you're focused on it. Nothing else takes your attention away from it, and you've got 100% attention going into it, and you get focus. The moment you focus on anything, you start enjoying, you start learning, you start experimenting, you start unlearning, you start relearning. And if you actually flip that with a person who's not passionate and not focused, he will look at those as problem areas. You look at those as areas of learning. That's the difference when you have a combination of passion and focus. Every problem becomes an opportunity to learn for you, and you start looking at things positively. And finally, that leads you to what I call is your IKIGAI. It's a very simple diagram which teaches you how to find your own calling in life. My dear young friends, I've got a very simple take for you. What happens after that? You found your IKIGAI, it's nice. Some people find their calling and don't do anything about it. So what after you have found what you like? That's equally important. You find yourself a deep amount of passion. What does passion mean? It means unlimited energy levels. You never get tired of doing what you do. You have unimaginable synergy that happens with your life and everything else. And you've got a huge amount of focus on what you're doing. So you're really not bothered about the success that you're achieving because of what you're doing. You essentially fall in love with what you do. That's the translation of the entire thing. All of us are designed by nature to fall in love. Some fall in love with people, some fall in love with animals, some fall in love with plants. Some of us are fortunate to fall in love with what we want to do with our lives. I leave you with a very simple thought. From today, my dear friends, don't postpone your life. Find your IKIGAI.